Hi, this is Ron Gannett here in beautiful Saddlebrook, Arizona, and we are talking about a suffering sampler. And today we have come to number 17, and I'm calling it God's Seal of Approval. You've heard of the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, where there's something far better, and that is God's Seal of Approval. I remember back when I was in college, I had a job working in a grocery store, and I was a brand new cashier, and all of a sudden one week $20 was missing. And the head cashier came to me at the end of that day and said, "Ron, it's missing. Do you have it?" And I said, "No, I don't." I felt intimidated that he would think that I would steal $20 from the store. Well, that week went by and I felt under suspicion. And finally, on Friday afternoon, I went up to the head cashier and I said, "Did you find the $20? He sort of grunted and walked off. And the manager turned to me and said, "Yes, it came up in accounting. All the money is there." And I thought I was so happy to have the manager tell me that I was okay. But you know, there's a higher authority, and that's the God of heaven. And we want his seal of approval. You know, there's an interesting verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 19. And it reads this. He says, "No doubt there have to be differences among you to show who has God's approval." In the early church, there was a division between the rich and the poor. When they gathered around the Lord's table, they would even have people eating more at the expense of others, some even getting drunk, others making the poor feel badly because they didn't have as much to bring to eat to the agape love feast. And you know, there was a complaint going on between all the Christians in the church. And Paul is saying you have to have differences like this to show who has God's approval. Because in the midst of division like this, God reveals who is right and who is wrong. You know, the test for that behavior, the test for God's seal of approval, who is right and who is wrong in a situation, is determined by a big test. And that test is behavior, how we act during that crisis. I've had the privilege of helping many couples work through issues, and many church volunteers come in with conflict. And you sit down and you hear one person say yes and the other person says no. And you're trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong when the stories differ so much. What you have to do is look beyond the words and to see the person who is speaking. Is there a hidden agenda? Is there style of abuse? Is there deception? Is there something that's going on that helps you understand, who's telling the truth? You look at life like that and you realize that you don't know all the facts and you can't prove it, but inside something tells you that this person is right and this person is wrong because the truth rings in the way they behave. And my friends, that's exactly how God is saying here. He said, "I want to look at your behavior in such a way to know that you have my stamp of approval by the way you behave in a conflict, and to rise like cream to the top because of the style of your life." I have a dear pastor friend who planted a church. He built it up to probably 1,500 to 2,000 people. After 30 years of service, he came home from a missions trip, and the board of elders met him at the door and said his services were no longer needed. Well, he accepted that unfairness. It hurt. And he went his way, and they brought on a younger staff person. And that church today is no longer 2,000. That church today is about 300 to 400 people. At the moment, you feel like you've been abused. At the moment, you feel like you've been taken advantage of. But if you wait long enough, eventually people will see who is right and who is wrong, and those differences reveal God's stamp of approval. Jesus Christ was on the cross. He looked like a loser to the audience, but one day every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. Oh, my friends, when people hurt you, when you feel like you've been abused or taken advantage of, Remember Christ and remember this promise that differences must occur so that God can tell the world that you have His stamp of approval.